What's going on, fight fans? Welcome back to Knock On, your home for everything, boxing with no fluff and all facts. Today's episode is all about one of the most emotionally charged, legacy-heavy, and flat-out complicated matchups in modern British boxing history, Chris Eubank Jr. versus Conor Benn. And no, I'm not just talking about the fight inside the ring. I'm talking about the family feud that's got an entire generation of fight fans talking. Because with just days to go until this mega clash, there's a story bubbling beneath the surface that hasn't gotten nearly enough attention. Not from promoters, not from broadcasters, and, surprisingly, not from many creators here on YouTube. That story? Chris Eubank Sr., a British boxing legend and the father of one half of this main event, wants absolutely nothing to do with it. In fact, he hates the idea that this fight is even happening. And today, we're breaking down exactly why. From the deep family history and personal trauma, to the brutal truths of boxing weight cuts, to the legacy stakes that go far beyond belts and titles. We're unpacking all of it, so hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and let's dive deep. Eubank Jr. versus Benn. Two sons of two legendary fighters. This matchup sells itself. You've got nostalgia, you've got rivalry, and you've got two guys who genuinely seem like they want to tear each other apart. On paper, it's perfect. But while fans are hyped, there's been one voice of serious concern throughout all of this: Chris Eubank Sr. And it's not just concern, it's opposition. Public, emotional, unwavering opposition. Sr. hasn't just questioned the matchup from a sporting perspective. He's condemned it, loudly, and in a way that's forced many of us to ask, why? Well, to understand that, we need to go way back. Let's rewind to the early 1990s. Chris Eubank Sr. was one of the most iconic figures in British boxing, known for his upright stance, his extravagant personality, and his iron will. Eubank was a genuine superstar. In 1990, he faced Nigel Benn, Conor's father, in a brutal war that became one of the defining moments in UK boxing. It was violent, it was personal, and it was unforgettable. Eubank stopped Benn in the 9th round, and their rivalry was set in stone. Eubank would go on to hold the WBO super middleweight title for years, going undefeated in his first 33 fights. But despite his achievements, there's one event in his career that haunted him: the Michael Watson fight in 1991. Watson suffered a near-fatal injury in that bout, collapsing in the ring and falling into a coma. He was left with permanent brain damage. Eubank has spoken candidly about the trauma he experienced after that, the guilt, the horror, and how it changed his view of the sport. So when Eubank Sr. sees his son cutting massive amounts of weight to fight a naturally smaller opponent, alarm bells go off, not just as a father, but as someone who's seen the darkest possible outcome of a boxing ring. Let's not forget, this isn't the first time this fight's been scheduled. Back in 2022, the original Eubank Jr. versus Benn fight was called off at the last minute after Conor Benn failed a drug test for a banned substance. It was a chaotic moment, with both sides trading blame and fans left confused and disappointed. But behind the scenes, Chris Eubank Sr. was relieved. Why? Because he'd been protesting the fight from the start, and even went as far as to say he'd go on hunger strike to stop it. His concern was the weight, specifically Eubank Jr. being forced to drop down to 157 pounds, a weight he hadn't fought at since his early 20s. Combine that with a harsh rehydration clause and you've got a recipe for serious danger. Senior believed it was reckless, dangerous, and above all, unnecessary. And now, 2 years later, the fight's back on, this time at 160. Slightly better, sure, but in Senior's eyes, still not good enough. Chris Eubank Jr. has carved out his own respectable career. He's not his father, and that's the point. While Eubank Sr. was more composed and calculated, Jr. is rawer, more aggressive, and perhaps more emotionally driven. He's had big wins against fighters like James DeGale and Liam Smith, but he's also taken tough losses against George Groves and Billy Joe Saunders. For years, he's been right on the edge of breaking into that elite tier. This fight, in many ways, represents his last big push for legacy, not necessarily because it's for a world title, but because of the name attached to it. Benn. That name means something. It's historic, it's personal. But for Eubank Sr., this isn't a legacy fight. It's a shadow fight, one that's dragging up trauma, resentment, and concern, not glory. Now, let's talk about the other side of this. Because Conor Benn isn't just moving up in weight, he's jumping multiple divisions. Normally, a 147-pound welterweight, Benn is jumping all the way to 160. That's a huge leap, and it raises a bunch of questions. How will he carry the weight? Will he still have his trademark explosiveness? Will the power translate? Benn says he's ready. But remember, this isn't just about the fight, it's about the aftermath. And the weight dynamics, both dropping for Eubank and climbing for Benn, make this one of the riskiest fights either man has ever taken. One of the biggest red flags in this entire fight is the rumored rehydration clause. Now, we still don't have official details, but insiders are saying there's a 10-pound cap. That means Eubank can't gain more than 10 pounds between the weigh-in and the fight. That's a massive limitation. Fighters typically use that 24-hour window to fully rehydrate and restore strength. This cap changes that. And it's not just about muscle or size. We're talking about hydration of the brain, organ function, reflexes. When a fighter enters the ring dehydrated, the risk of serious injury, even death, goes way up. So when Eubank Sr. talks about shame, he's not talking about pride. He's talking about safety. Let's step back and look at the bigger picture, because this is more than just a fight. It's a family crisis. The Eubanks have been estranged for years. There's been public spats, emotional interviews, and long periods of silence. And now, on the biggest night of Junior's career, his father won't be there, won't support it, won't even watch it. That's tragic, because at the core of all this, for better or worse, boxing is what binds them. It's what built the Eubank name. It's what gave them their platform, and now it's what's dividing them. Here's the kicker. This fight was supposed to honor legacy. Benn versus Eubank 2.0, the next generation of a legendary rivalry. But instead, it's become a symbol of how complicated that legacy can be. For Eubank Jr., beating Benn means stepping out of his father's shadow. For Benn, it's about avenging his father's most painful defeat. But for Chris Eubank Sr., it's a painful reminder of everything that can go wrong in boxing, physically, emotionally, and personally. That's the million-dollar question. Will this fight deliver? Will the risk be worth it? If Eubank Jr. wins, he carves out a new chapter in the family story. He silences the doubters and walks into boxing history. If Benn wins, he completes the revenge arc and puts his name in lights forever. But if something goes wrong, a bad weight cut, a serious injury, or even a one-sided beatdown, we'll all be asking the same question. Was it worth it? No matter which side of the fence you fall on, one thing's for sure. This fight means more than just belts and bragging rights. It's about family, legacy, and the very real risks of this brutal sport. Let me know in the comments. Do you think Chris Eubank Sr. is right to speak out? Or is this just part of the game? And of course, who do you think takes it on fight night, Eubank Jr. or Conor Benn? Drop your predictions, hit that like button if you enjoyed this deep dive, and don't forget to subscribe to Knock On, your home for the best boxing content on YouTube. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.